Hi, Justine. Welcome to the Integrative Health Coach Success Podcast.
Hi, Julia. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to our conversation today. We're going to dive into a topic that we've kind of touched upon in the past, but I think you're working with a specific kind of modality and structure to addressing it. And so I'm really looking forward to talking about that. But what I would love to do to start is, could you share with our listeners a little bit about what you're currently doing with your IHP certification?
Yeah, so I'm working fully virtually, majority one-on-one with clients. I'm doing a little bit of foundational health coaching. I do have a background in mercury toxicity, so I work with some heavy metal people, but the majority of my focus now is in the emotional realm. With a certification that I got after IHP called Mind, Body, Spirit Release. And with Mind, Body, Spirit Release, we use muscle testing, and we can do it remotely to identify specific emotions, specific limiting beliefs that are maybe unprocessed still in the body and blocking us from our health and wellness goals.
Yeah. So important, I think, to always kind of have the mind, body, spirit aspect of the body when it comes into trying to quote unquote heal or trying to get better, right? Because so much of it can be interconnected, right? We're not just like this
Definitely.
Physical body independent of our mind and emotions. So I can't wait to dive into that, but I'm curious, were you already kind of in the health and wellness space? Was it something that you kind of got into with your own journey? How did you find IHP and get to the point where you are now?
Yeah, so I had my own health journey. It started about 10 years ago. I was one of those people who was always sick. You probably find that clients tend to fall into one of two groups: the people who were mostly healthy and then something tipped the scale and they fell into illness, and the other people who were just literally never healthy. And that was me my whole life. And when I was just graduating college, I decided I wanted to take things into my own hands and started exploring with diet, had some other kinds of medical injuries in that during that time, and mercury toxicity and all the things. But there was always this question in my mind of like, why is it so hard for some of us to be healthy, and why is it so much easier for others? I was not doing health as a career. I was actually in classical music. I was performing in orchestras and teaching lessons one-on-one on my instrument. But then in the last couple of years, I was put in a position where there were some things I didn't want to sacrifice to stay in classical music. So I moved into the health space. And at this point, I already had a lot of knowledge from my own years of research, but I knew I wanted some sort of certification. I wanted something to tie everything together. And IHP was definitely a great vehicle for that. So yeah, here I am.
That's great. What instrument did you play?
Oboe.
Oh, wow.
That's a woodwind. Most people don't know it.
Yeah, I feel like my kids have talked, like my son specifically, like loves instruments, and he loves that word. So he's always like, it's just, I think he's like, what, the oboe? So that's great. And then when you went into IHP, was there any point where you were kind of, faced with the decision? Was it a hard choice for you? Did you kind of make it rather easy
to leave music?
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, it was definitely hard. Yeah, it did not feel like a choice. I felt very forced into it, and I was pretty resentful about that. However, as I've moved more into the health space and I'm working with clients and I'm helping them and watching their successes, it's been so rewarding. And I've seen patterns in my own life that make it very clear that I'm in the right place now. Mm-hmm. And I know that maybe God put things in my path to send me where I was supposed to be.
Sure. Yeah. Sometimes it's so important for us to kind of look at maybe, redirections are we're redirected in order for us to kind of end up where we're supposed to be, even if the redirection might feel forced or it might feel, something that wasn't our choice. And initially, we're kind of all end up where we're supposed to be. So that's great that you can have that perspective now.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because it's probably important to staying healthy, right? Because obviously
absolutely
our emotions, like we're going to talk about. I would love for you to give us a little bit of an overview of kind of what it means to have the expertise of being mind, body, spirit releaser, and what that modality ties in, how you use it with your clients. So if you would share a little bit with us about that.
Yeah, so it's clear that emotions and trauma, which I don't even like using the word trauma a lot because I think there's a lot of connotations with it, but really unprocessed emotions, there's just a lot more awareness around this now. And so people are starting to become more aware, which is fantastic. The really special and unique thing about Mind Body Spirit Release is that we use muscle testing, which I know you've had some podcast episodes talking about that. So using the body and basically hacking into the nervous system to identify what the unique stressors are for a particular person. So the really cool thing about this is we can access what's in the subconscious and we can find it. So someone doesn't have to come into MBSR is the acronym, an MBSR session and already know this is what I need to release. They may know it, they may not. And very often what happens is what comes up, especially for someone who's very emotionally aware. I've had people say like, are you in my head? I had someone else just last week say that one MBSR session was like 7 years of therapy.
Yes.
And so, yeah, it's really, really special in that we are able to use that muscle testing to access things that maybe are not consciously known and then release them. We use a cold laser. So it's like an infrared thing that calms the nervous system. So we identify the stressor and we calm the nervous system in response to the stressor. And so there's this energy component, but there's also this awareness and information component because the client gets a list of things. And maybe it's a list of emotions that they're holding on to. Maybe it's a specific situation. We can identify, different stressors, and you actually get that information to then take into your life and work on change. And maybe there's an area where more boundaries need to be set, or maybe with health stuff, we're spiraling into this place of like trying to control everything. And I know like when I've been there where everything's going wrong, you're doing everything right and nothing is working and you just want to control it even more. And that doesn't work very well. So Mind Body Spirit Release is really amazing for helping to peel out, okay, what do I really need to focus on? What can I let go of? What is the bigger picture here? And how are these emotions underlying potentially a sensitivity, in my case, to mercury, a heightened sensitivity to foods or mold or whatever? How is this, not to say that the physical causes are not very real, but how do the emotions and nervous system piece play in with all of it together?
Sure. Yeah, it's just another tool in the toolbox, and you're able to use it in addition to other forms of testing or other things that you know from IHP. So I'm curious, is it something that you use right off the bat? Is it kind of your, like, do you use it to kind of see, okay, what kind of a, mind, body, spirit landscape am I working with? Or is it something that you go ahead and you use like once you hit like a roadblock type of a situation?
I leave that up to the client. I let people, I tell them about it, and it's on my Instagram. And if people are interested, I love doing it with them. It's most effective with those who are ready to go and gung-ho about it, or, they hear about it and they go, yes, that's what I need. Mm-hmm. If someone is like, no, I don't have emotional issues, it's not usually as effective because there is that, in addition to the energy component, as we talked about, there's that emotional awareness piece and then working on things in your own life. And so if someone is not in a place to be doing that, it's not going to be as effective. So I don't want to push people into doing something that they're not ready for. Yeah. So I do offer the physical coaching, and I just kind of make it known, this is here, when, if you want it. And that seems to be the best way to go.
Yeah, absolutely. And do you see, I'm curious, so if you're dealing with clients who are kind of, stuck and they say like, okay, let's explore that. Have you had instances where, you've tried certain things as far as, protocols or, diet and all that lifestyle type of stuff, and that the MBSR, did I say that right?
Yes. Yeah, you did.
The MBSR is kind of like the missing link and helps clients get from one end to the other?
Absolutely. Yes. Yeah. That's definitely been happening again and again with people who have, they've done all the diet stuff, they've done the protocols, and they just feel like they're, just spinning and getting to that sense of like, I need to control more and getting more and more stressed because they're doing everything and it's not working. I think
Yes.
there are, really what we're trying to do with this, just in general, in IHP and health coaching, wellness, all of it is remove the blocks to healing, because the body knows how to heal. We're trying to get to the blocks, and everyone has their own unique set of blocks. And for some people, I think that the toxicity issues are not going to be able to be addressed until the emotional issues are addressed. There are other people who won't be able to access the emotional stuff until the physical stuff is addressed. And so the order really depends on the person. It's not always one thing or another.
Yeah, I love that, because it again takes into account like that bio individual approach of, regardless of like what modality, what things you believe in most, you're still flexible when it comes to the, the specific needs of the client, right? Because at the end of the day, it really is about deciding, okay, this is what would be best in this situation, and we're going to kind of just meet the next thing as it comes, because that's truly, kind of what we all should be doing as practitioners, to be right by the client.
Yeah, there's no one protocol.
Right. Yeah. And because, I mean, it's no different than there's no one same person, right? Everybody's toxicities build differently. Everybody's experience, through life is different. And I'm curious, because you said that you didn't like to use the word trauma. And I'm curious if you kind of shy away from that term for the reason that I think it is, which is that do you find that people think like trauma has to be these big, huge events of like earth shattering, oh my gosh, I can't believe that happened to you moments, for it to be stored as trauma in the body?
For sure. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So my first introduction to this subject, I think, was similar probably to most people, was reading When the Body Keeps the Score. And I remember reading this book and I was like, okay, well, this is me to a T, like as far as the responses. But I was thinking, like, I don't have these extreme examples of abuse or anything. Like, why? I was so confused about, like, why is my body responding like a World War II veteran or someone who had an extreme pattern of abuse? And the more I researched and the more I read other books and looked into the topic, it all started to make more sense. But I think most people going into learning about this have that response, unless they do have some sort of serious thing in their background.
Right. Yeah. And it's interesting, because I think if I were to argue, I would say probably 90% of people have some sort of unresolved, quote unquote, trauma, right? And again, not this major, but having, an experience where they're, I was actually recently talking to a client who he said to me, my parents were wonderful. I had amazing parents. He said the hardest thing for me was when my sister, he was 5, I believe, and she was 13 years older than him. She was 18 and she left for the convent. And he's in his 60s. This was a long time ago. But basically, like he said, that when that happened, like they just left and didn't really come back. And he said he has no notable memories. He has memories before that. He has no memories the entire year after that. And I was like, that's trauma. Like he was incredibly close to her. She was like a mother figure to him, right? And he was just kind of like talking about it nonchalantly. But I'm thinking to myself, like, that's traumatic. You're a 5-year-old little boy, and your sister, who's kind of like a motherly figure to you, leaves and quite literally never comes home. And like, yes, you see her, but not to the same extent that you were used to interacting with her. And it's amazing, right? He has no memories for like the entire year after that. He doesn't remember kindergarten. He remembers first grade, but like doesn't remember it.
Yeah.
And so the way the body responds to that, nobody would think of that as like, quote unquote, traumatic. But when you understand what, the inner workings of all of this, it is trauma. That's trauma to a nervous system, to an emotion system, for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, I like to explain it as triggers. And you can think of your body, like if you get in the car to drive to the grocery store, you know where you're going. You don't think, I need to turn left at this light. You just do it. And that's how our body responds to environmental triggers. And if we have a memory, even if it's a subconscious memory, 95% of our brain is subconscious. Let's say, we'll take the grocery store example. You were 5 years old in the grocery store with your mom and you lost her. You don't know where she is. you're actually safe, but you don't know which aisle she's in. And it's terrifying as a 5-year-old. And you have just this intense stress response in your body. And maybe you don't even remember it 30 years later consciously, but maybe your body is still, every time you go in the grocery store, those stress hormones are firing and it's taking you out of parasympathetic, and then it's reducing your ability to heal. It's reducing your ability to digest, to absorb your nutrients, to detox, all of these physical things. If you have these triggers in your life that are constantly just subconsciously pulling you out of that parasympathetic, it's going to be blocking your healing attempts in other areas. So MBSR is about unlearning those triggers, which is so cool.
Yes. Yeah. It sounds amazing. So tell me a little bit about so if you were to do this with a client, what's the kind of structure of like, how does it all unfold? So it's, you said muscle testing predominantly is how you do it.
Yes. Yeah. So I have
for somebody who's not maybe familiar with muscle testing.
Okay.
If somebody's listening. Yeah.
Yeah. So muscle testing is identifying a stress to the nervous system. It's like a polygraph machine, only we're testing the body a little bit more directly rather than having to hook up to a machine. It gets a little weirder remotely. So I use my body as proxy and I test myself in place of the client. It sounds crazy. It works incredibly well. Like I said, I have clients say, like, how did you know that? It's not magic. It's this connection. I like to explain, if you were to look at the phone and you see someone's name calling you on the phone, and it's someone who is, maybe there's a lot of stress or, negative emotions around this person, you can feel that in your body. Or you look at the phone and it's ringing and it's someone you love very deeply and feel very safe with. Very different response in your body. So the muscle testing is interpreting what your body is telling me. So the remote testing is, I'm asking your body through my body what's going on, and then I'm interpreting what my body is saying. And so it's all binary, meaning either a yes or a no question. So I have lists and lists of things. So I'm testing through and saying, is this relevant? Is this relevant? So we'll do sometimes we'll do what's called a foundational clearing, usually for the first time, and we'll just see, what is your body ready to release right now? So the testing doesn't show everything that's in you, which would be just completely overwhelming. Just kind of, what is your body safe to release right now? And actually the first thing we do is start with using the muscle testing to ask permission to clear. And so sometimes if you're already releasing something, you're already stressed, or something else is going on, it'll be a no, and then we just reschedule. So that's one of the beautiful things I love about MBSR is it's very much body directed, and asking the body, are you ready right now? If it says no, we wait. And so, yeah. So that's a foundational clearing. We just kind of ask the body what it's ready to release right now. And then after that first foundational clearing, I take people through what's called an advanced clearing. And we actually start with writing an intention or a goal. And this goal could be around an emotional pattern. It could be around a trigger. It could be even around a physical symptom, if we want to try to peel back the layers and find out the underlying emotions or limiting beliefs behind a physical symptom. And a really common one is like, I am not capable of being healthy. And if people are believing that and they're trying to heal, but they don't actually believe they can heal, there's a huge block there. So MBSR can help get rid of that block. So through this process of multiple sessions, we get more and more information. And usually for most people, there's like 1 or 2 threads that start to become really clear, that there's something underlying, and maybe they have, this whole array of issues, but underneath all of it is one emotional pattern. And so we start working at that, and then these benefits just explode in their life in every way, which is so cool to see.
Yeah. And when people are do you find that when they're going through it and they have like one successful, session, they're, wanting more? It's kind of no different than like if you put somebody on a multivitamin and they get a little bit more energy, they're like, okay, I'm feeling better. I wonder like what else I could, kind of do to improve the situation. And like they become motivated by what they're experiencing.
Definitely. Yes. I will say it's not just a straight upward improvement. There's very often detox reactions, which was one of my first experiences. I was like, okay, this is real. I started getting acne breakouts. I was passing parasites. I passed more parasites from emotional release than I ever have from taking like parasite cleansing supplements.
Wow.
And I'll have like old injuries or old symptoms flare. And this actually happened to me last week. I released emotions from, I didn't know that they were from a particular time until 2 days later, I started getting a flare in a foot injury that I had 8 years ago. All of a sudden, my foot just started hurting. And I was like, what is going on? Then I looked back at the notes from everything I had cleared earlier in the week and realized, oh, this was my body telling me that we're working on that period of time when this foot injury happened. So there's just such a huge connection. So there's a little bit of a dip usually for most people, some either those negative emotions, if we're releasing something like resentment or unforgiveness, maybe that sticks around for a few days, or maybe there's increased fatigue, that kind of thing. And then the upswing happens, and then we start noticing I'm not getting triggered as easily. Another example from my own life is I had a lot of social anxiety as a child, and I was extremely shy. I couldn't make friends, and I find playgrounds with children playing, I have found them extremely triggering. Like I'll feel a stress response in my body if I'm walking down the street and just pass a playground with children, because it was such a terrifying time for me as a child. And I noticed, this was one of the first things I noticed with Mind Body Spirit release. I was walking down the street and I walked past a playground and I didn't have a stress response in my body.
Yeah, there's no coincidence there. Like there's just like for it to just all of a sudden go away, right? There's some way that you unraveled it. It no longer had a grip on your nervous system because it was worked through, released. And I think when we're kind of in a space where we're able to be present and understand our emotions, and because for a lot of people who kind of aren't present with that stuff, they might have walked by the playground, they didn't have a stress response, but they didn't notice, right? And so kind of being in tune with your body is really important, which most of us IHPs are certainly. But, allowing clients to kind of encouraging clients, to pay attention to that.
Noticing what their body is telling them. Yeah. On every level, not just from the food changes, not just from the supplements, but from those stress or the emotional triggers, that kind of thing.
Yes.
Yeah. So client successes, I've had a lot of success with PMS and menstrual symptoms for sure. Something I did for myself as well as for another friend who's also a practitioner is reduce gluten sensitivity to the point of being able to tolerate sourdough. So both of us were having very emotional and physical responses to when we tried to reintroduce sourdough. And we were both able to reintroduce it. Now I can eat it all day long, whereas before I had like a full almost autoimmune reaction even to long ferment sourdough. So that was pretty amazing. Joint pain, weight is a big one too. Emotional connections with weight gain or weight loss. Not people who aren't able to gain weight if they need to, or lose weight if they need to. They're doing all the right things and it's just not happening.
Yeah.
And improved relationships. Sorry, that was the other one very much. Yeah.
Yes. Well, I feel like do you mean like more partner, like romantic partnership?
Can be partner. A lot of times it's with parents, because so much of this stuff is rooted in childhood. So improved relationships with parents is huge.
Yeah, absolutely. Because it's, like you said, rooted there. But I think also a lot of us kind of play it out with, whether it be romantic partners or even in friendships. Right. And so sometimes if we're kind of trying to play it out or resolve it over here, if it's worked through internally, then it doesn't kind of continue to play out with those other relationships as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Do you find, is there kind of like this common, I'm only thinking like from a worldly perspective, right? Are there common, when you said, I think you used the word thread, like maybe it's like, I'm not good enough, or like is there a common thread that you find with people that is just more common than not?
Yeah, definitely that. Yeah, lack of like, I'm not worthy. I'm not capable of being healthy. It's another one. And then feelings of abandonment or feeling like an outsider, loneliness. That's another huge one.
Okay. Yeah. And are any of them more complex to kind of get on the other side of, or they just kind of all take their own form depending on who you're working with?
Yeah, it really depends on the person.
Yes. Yep.
Yeah.
And then as far as kind of the layers of it, do you find that it's, very similar to like, oh, okay, here's yeast and bacteria, let's get rid of that. Oh, whoops, now there's heavy metals. Is it kind of similar in the sense that you kind of just keep peeling back the layers and you go deeper with kind of each session that you're doing it?
Definitely. Yeah. Each session reveals more and gets more awareness. And so I tell people you don't need to know what you want to do going into it. We will figure it out along the way. And so I work with people on journaling prompts and all sorts of action steps for them to do in between the clearing itself to help them increase self-awareness. So we'll create a specific action plan for them based on what is coming up, and through those steps and through that process, usually they'll come back to the next meeting and I had all these epiphanies and this and this and this.
Yeah.
And then we go from there.
Yeah, very cool. How much time in between the appointments do you give if you're just working on, something like the MBSR? Is there a certain amount of time where like you allow them to kind of sit with whatever you worked with, or does it not matter? Does it not have a structure?
Yeah, usually. So for the introductory package, which I do that first basic level clearing, and then we'll do 1 or 2 weeks before the second clearing. And then from the second clearing on, we'll do those advanced clearings, which usually about a month is good. Sometimes people want more. There's no harm in waiting longer. I think it's better to wait longer than to try to push too aggressively.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So one other question that I have is, how do you feel like it's kind of up-leveled your IHP certification and ability to kind of work as a practitioner in that space, more with the physical? Do you, like, if you were to kind of give it a percentage, like how often do you use it? How, meaningful is it to you in your practice? It sounds like quite a bit.
Yeah, it's pretty much taken over. I do still do some of that physical health stuff as people want, but I really love the emotional stuff. I find it so much more fun than lab testing or, like I don't want to try to micromanage the body. That to me is like boring. Yeah. But I love peeling back these emotional layers. And so, yeah, I was really struggling with finding a niche until this. And for multiple reasons. One, I really identified with it and it made just so much sense to me and it just felt so right. And the other thing is I actually did a lot of this work on myself specifically related to my business. So I started, as we were talking about writing intentions, I actually started writing intentions for myself related to my business, figuring out, having more clarity and direction and understanding what I was doing with my business, and realized I had a lot of limiting beliefs around money and finances. I had a lot of guilt around accepting money and charging clients. I really wasn't taking my business completely seriously because I didn't believe that I could be successful. And so I was self-sabotaging. And not that my business was unsuccessful before, but I was not working efficiently because I didn't truly believe that I could be successful on the next level, like improving, if that makes sense.
Yes.
So doing this work was huge. And so that's something I've been thinking about offering to other practitioners. So I have a package that I just put together. If practitioners are interested in learning more about this modality, but not yet ready to dive into maybe doing the mind, body, spirit release training and certification themselves, for those who are maybe where I was, where you're like, I just don't know what I want my niche to be. And I'm not, just feeling like technically what you need to do, but you're having trouble really implementing it or not finding like you have that direction that you're really looking for. So I would love to work with any practitioners interested in exploring that realm to add that aspect of their business.
That's it's so great. We'll link all that in the show notes, and I'll at the end of the episode, I'll have you kind of reiterate all that because I think that's great for us to kind of let practitioners hear. I'm curious because you mentioned a few times. Are you able to do this on yourself? Like, do you have an MBSR practitioner that you see, or are you able to kind of like now muscle test and work on yourself?
Yes to both.
Yes.
I
To both.
am
Okay.
able to do it to myself, which of course is a cheaper way to go about it. But that being said, it is more effective to have someone else do it. And it's pretty cool when you tell someone else, these are my goals, or this is where I'm feeling stuck, and they help you create an intention and just kind of put that other perspective, that second set of eyes. And they, even just having a witness, it feels different for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And we've talked all the time about, even if I were to run labs, physical labs and stuff came back, it's always so much. Yeah, it's hard to diagnose to, quote unquote, treat yourself for stuff that, somebody else could have a different set of eyes on. And I think just because we're emotional beings, it's hard to kind of separate it. So,
Yeah.
yeah, important to have a mentor, coach, all that jazz, even when you're a great one yourself. Yeah. So if someone was listening and they were like, as far as like the certification process, you obviously did a course. Is there like an umbrella of certifications that you went through?
Yeah. So mind, body, spirit, release. So we can link the website. Yes.
I gotcha.
Yes.
Okay. That's the certification. How long does it take?
It's quite short. I want to say it's about a month for the first level. So there's 3 levels. So I'm right now certified through level 2, and I'm going to do level 3 in May.
Great. So something kind of short that people can, get into without too much of a time commitment.
Right. It's a concentrated, very, you're working hard during that time, but it's not a long-term time commitment. And then obviously there's lots of learning as you go.
Of course. Yes. Do you have like favorite resources as far as like websites or books that kind of talk more about it? If somebody's like looking to get more information, do you have favorite resources, in regards to the topic?
For Mind, Body, Spirit Release specifically, I would say the Mind, Body, Spirit Release website. If you're on Instagram, Amanda Mirabella, I think her handle is Mirabella Holistic. She's one of the teachers and she's fantastic. The modality itself is very up and coming. So I think we're going to see a lot more of it growing very quickly, but there's not any books specifically about MBSR. Now, if you're interested in more of just understanding nervous system, understanding emotions, trauma, I love Pocket Guide to Polyvagal Theory by Stephen Porges, Waking the Tiger by Peter Levine. Those are some of my favorites. When the Body Says No by Gabor Mate. And those aren't MBSR specific, but they do, I think, help understand this whole topic much more thoroughly and how it's relevant for really all of us.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. I love Gabor Mate. He just came out with a new book, so he's been everywhere, doing interviews and whatnot. And he really does a beautiful job of kind of explaining. Being a parent, listening to some of his stuff is slightly terrifying because I'm like, oh boy, these are all of the ways that I'm screwing up these babies. But the truth is like, again, nobody's perfect. We're all kind of on this journey to like understanding and learning more. And I think the more conscious parents we have in the world, the, better off our children and, future generations will be for sure. But yeah, he does a beautiful job in When the Body Says No. And what was the tiger one? I don't think I'd ever heard of that.
Waking the Tiger.
Waking the Tiger. Okay. Similar information as far as like suppressed emotions and whatnot.
Yeah. He kind of explains trauma, I think, really well. And that like little T trauma that we were talking about and how it stores, really that trauma is energy stored in the body, not necessarily the severity of the experience, but our body's response to the experience, when and why it would store. And he also gives some basic somatic experiencing techniques that can be worked on in the book. So I think it's a really great resource.
Yeah. Okay. That's great. And if others are listening and they want to find out more about you, where are all the places you show up? So like your Instagram, your website, kind of all those places.
Yeah, I'm most active on Instagram, which is Finding Radiant Health. And there's a period between each word. And then my website is findingradianthealth.com. I'm trying to keep the website updated as I go, but generally I'm more active on Instagram.
That's great. And we'll kind of put in the show notes the website for the MBSR and all of that.
Perfect.
Yeah. Thank you so much for being a guest on the Integrative Health Coach Success Podcast. This was such a great interview, I think, with lots of new and really interesting information. So I appreciate you being here.
Thank you, Julia.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.